Oh. Yeah, live stuff.
This talk, which is aimed for developers and people who are working with potential clients, but it's equally viable. This one's got the most showing actions, showing naming tools and saying go. Option 2, how many of you have last year? That's unfortunate because I think that version of that talk, which is much more perhaps on so, who wants the frame? Who wants the one that's actually you've got about 5 seconds before the useful. I can do both. Right, you're happy with 2 hours. Yeah. Useful who's in the this is one first one, and the second one, putting the other one. All right, are we ready? All right, okay, so not GDPR, so blah blah blah. I'll explain more about this when you're ready to go. But this isn't talking about and we're going to update over to I'm going to start with a course routine. And now you can come back to the charity. This is a small children's charity. They do lots of really good things, but primarily what they do is take kids who are too little and take them on a nice holiday. Get lots of photos for the family, make it all until it all goes horribly wrong. Why did it go horribly wrong? Well, they built their website, WordPress. So it was built by Nintendo. And as part of that, they got third-party agencies to do it. And the agency didn't know pay its job, but they built it. Doing TV, again, isn't necessarily a problem. They also use a slider. Web slider. This is a combination of things that is bad. Now, web slider has a terrible reputation. The reason it has a terrible reputation goes something along the lines of this. Theme developers like sliders because they make things go round and round. People like sliders going round and round. So what they do is they bundle the plugin web slider with the theme. And they sell you the theme. No problem. Plugin web slider. Quite a bad bug. They should take over the entire website. Or whatever code you like arbitrarily on there. Web slider go, no worries, we patched it. Here is the new version. Problem is that when was the last time any of you updated a theme? You don't, because you modify themes, and when you modify the theme, and then if you go and download a new theme and put it on, it all gets overwritten. And if the only way to get the plugin, i.e. website, is to download the new theme, we're sort of stuck. Consequently, there are lots and lots of versions of very old websites. This one right in the front to make it look really busy now. Look, your live stream's looking so much better with more heads popping up. So you end up in a scenario where a website, even though it's been updated, the people can't actually get those updates. So it becomes a brilliant target. You can exploit a plugin that is used massively in commercial plugins and it's only updated through commercial themes, you're onto a winner. Because you know that you're going to find loads of these sites and they're going to get exploited. In this case, that's exactly what happens here. The other two things that are interesting about the site is it has a plugin called ALO, Easy Mail Newsletter, and WPSMTP. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of these plugins. They have no vulnerability in them whatsoever. But remember, we went right back here. We've got Websider on there. Literally, they can just dump a PHP shell onto the site, and they can just access it as if they were writing into a terminal. So they've got the database connected, and they start looking around. Now, ALO Easy Mail Newsletter has a feature which basically lets you get bounce rates. So it sends out newsletters for you, like MailChimp. So it does bounce back. And how it does bounce back is it creates a virtual IMAP connection. Means it needs some credentials. So, if this was set up by a sane, sensible system administrator for a good company, they wouldn't have let you use your own personal credentials. But this wasn't. So this was set up, handed over to the marketing department because the IT guy at the charity said he wanted nothing to do with it. I'm not doing WordPress. We've met these people, we know these people. Yeah. Well, because of his actions, that meant that they didn't give him no help, so they did what actually it asks for a username and password to an email. What are they going to do? So the marketing director put her username and password in. So her username and password is stored in plain text in a database that we have full access to. Now, that's just her inbound credentials. Now, some servers have outbound SMTP relays that are different, but that's okay, because they also needed to send mail out to this server, so she had those credentials, and they match. Now, the problem with this is they match for a very good reason. As I said, this company had an IT guy, charity had an IT guy, had a budget, everything, which also meant that they spent a lot of time building their Outlook server, their Microsoft SharePoint, all the information and bits and pieces were inside their very Microsoft-centric world, which is all managed by our Active Directory, which uses the username and password. So her username and password wasn't just to her email. It gave access to everything on the network, including the VPN. Now this charity is in a scenario where we've gone from that little vanity website in the corner, which is nothing to do with our network whatsoever, is an instant gateway into their network to all those kids' records. It's so enchanting. That little side project that you might have done for the NHS was just for one of the NHS trusts. It was just about going and being more active. That had nothing. You weren't going to be turning off pacemakers. You had nothing in there that was medical. It was part of the clinical side of it. Yet your website that you helped develop might accidentally provide a way in. The good news is that the charity is completely made up. However, if anybody remembers the Panama Papers, that is the most likely route for how the Panama Papers were. The Moffat Fonseca, their website was made with WordPress and Divi, done by their marketing department, had nothing to do with the compliance and IT people. The credentials inside there were at least one set of credentials for an email. That email and password credentials was enough to then hop onto the next one. When we talk about security, it's stuff like this we're trying to stop. So I'll introduce myself. So my name's Tim, and I'm the WordPress platform lead at WordPress Meetup. I'm a former pen tester, and I'll tell you more about pen testing in a bit. I co-run WordPress leads. I used to work with people like PayPal. I've worked in the Cabinet Office, with Orange, and with the World Code Program. So I know a little bit about it. And off live stream, I might say how I want to use WordPress. And I do dev setups. Means I look cool like this when I go into meetings. But when I come out, I tend to look more like that. And go around the country scaring people. Now, back in 2016, how long ago this slide deck was originally for, and built for many iterations, it was estimated that there was going to be 2 trillion cost to businesses in 2019 due to sites being hacked. That was in 2016 when they were estimating it. Based on stuff from like earlier this year, they may have got that out by a factor of 10. That's primarily down to ransomware stuff. You know, taking out entire shipping fleets has a tendency to back up quite quick. But, and in just the space of 3 years, all our estimates regarding things have gone out. And it's expensive to be hacked and to sort things through, but you will survive. And while businesses do go bust because you get hacked, it is rare. How many people here have flown with British Airways in the last year? Yep, yeah, their planes still fly, and you stupidly still gave them credit card details. I mean, Equifax still has everybody's data. Worryingly. All these businesses, BMW, you still buy their cars and drive. Virtually every major firm you can think of probably has been hacked. How many people in the room use a password manager? All of them have been hacked. But we still use these things and things carry on like that. So, what I'm saying is, relax. Everything will be fine. Now, I'm going to try and introduce some information security parlance. So, rather than calling somebody a hacker or an actor, bad guy works quite well, but normally we refer to them as bad actors. Now, in most cases, bad actors are script kiddie right by automated stuff. There isn't actually a person at the end. And this talk is very much aimed at that side of things. Bad actors and low-level people who have a slight grudge against you. Someone has a real grudge against you, it costs virtually nothing to take down your site. So this talk's not related to that. And it's certainly not aimed at state actors or people who have budgets of state actors. If you have the NSA chasing after you, WordPress is the least of your problems. I probably can't help you.
So are you just saying that, Tim, that if someone's got a real grudge against you, you've got the skills, any site can be hacked?
There are plenty of ways your site could get hacked. And to the point that this talk will not cover all of it. I'm covering my arse. But yeah, genuinely, someone with a modicum of skill and an infinite amount of time will eventually get it. This is the good news. How many people have grudges against you, Mark? How bad are you? Thankfully, nobody actually cares about anybody's site. The vast majority of attacks are automated. Looking at our own platform, we're talking 99.999. Let's start again. 99.99999. We think we've attributed one attack to somebody manually doing something across our platform in the last 4 or 5 months. So, no, who are client? Not us. I'm the nice person. But seriously, most of these things are automated. So, when your site's taken down, it's not because someone actually cared. You are giving yourself way too much of an ego. Take that down. It's just automated attacks looking for known vulnerabilities across the board. Very rare for somebody to even try and target you and go through and run looking for vulnerabilities. They already know what vulnerabilities are there. They're simply looking for things that they can recognize that they can then just start throwing payload. So What we're going to do today is just reduce that attack surface down to as close to 0 as possible, thereby solving the problem. Now, how many people in here run a WordPress security plugin? Cool. WordFence is quite popular, better internet security, even more better internet security, super duper internet security, i.e. WPTW security. They're all useless. I mean, they're all got their place, but 99% of the time, this talk's not going to talk about plugins being the answer, because the answer is you and how you use that. Plugins have a place. Plugins can be useful in the right context, but they're more often than not, they're just in. So, we'll start right at the beginning with users. How many people in the room are an administrator of a website? Wow, some of you don't actually have admin access to a WordPress website. Cool. Well done, you guys. The ones who don't have admin access, congratulations, this is good. Those of you who do have some sort of WordPress administrator login level, should you? Is it your site? Question. Should you really have it even in your site? So, if you're in a position where you manage a website, go and look and see how many people are administrators on this. Because we did a little study, and we were finding that on average, an average website has 3.5 administrators. Not sure how half an administrator is bigger than that. I think that's a statistical issue. But 3.5 users were administrators on the average site. Would you like to hazard a guess how many the average site, how many people there, how many users there are on an average site on our platform?
Which one?
Close. 3.9. So overwhelmingly, and bearing in mind those sites include WooCommerce sites, where there are potentially tens of thousands of users, though obviously clearly not. But overwhelmingly, yeah, we are looking that most sites have more than one administrator. Why? Does the boss actually need to be an administrator? Should your boss be the administrator? Instead, we can start looking at how roles work. So an administrator is simply a bunch of capabilities. All it is. WordPress has a really simple yet flexible capability system. Basically, anything you do in the back end or in the up front requires a permission, and you can just use cat and say what the capability you want to assign is. Plugins can add their own capabilities, and they can assign it to the original. You can create new user roles. Fun fact: a user can have multiple roles. It comes in the UX interface that you see if you log into WordPress dashboard. But if you were to use something like WPTW, you can actually see if users are assigned multiple roles. It's fun when you see somebody who has a role of subscriber and also a role of administrator. It normally shows something bad is happening because they'll turn up in the subscriber column and have all the capabilities of an administrator. It's a really weird little bug. But go through. Remove all your administrators on the site, sure. Except for yourself. Everything you want to keep yourself. Really, normal. But remove the administrators and drop everybody down to an editor. Honestly, go do it tonight. See how long it takes. Rough rule of thumb, if it took under an hour for somebody to notice, that probably means that they're the administrator and you should be dropped down. Anything longer than a week, you can probably start asking questions. Why do you need an administrator? Because it probably means that they're doing something very specific. So can you just grab that user that specific thing? Can you create a new role? Is it an ego thing? I need to be an administrator. No problem. Super duper admin role. Set at the same level as a subscriber. My boss hasn't noticed. If you're in that scenario, you just give them whatever they want and that is entitled, just reduce down the capability. Getting your user roles right reduces that attack surface. Because a lot of the next few slides are all about protecting you as an individual. The thing is, it doesn't matter how much education we give to people. Everyone in this room is going to have the right habits. by the end of this talk, we'll have the right habits and go off and do the right things. You won't even tell your colleagues to do it, unless you can actually enforce it by sitting there over their shoulder and forcing them to do stuff. They won't. So the easiest solution is to reduce down that factor. If someone doesn't need to be an administrator, then let them be an administrator. Meanwhile, you need to have a nice secure password, or ideally a passphrase. People are getting better, but passwords like password 123 is still a thing. You can still end up in scenarios where people have weak passwords that can be brute force, and it's bad. Fixing it, the ideal solution is passphrase. This is where we take 4 or 5 random words, we concatenate them together, and we use that. The whole point of a password, everything you've been taught about passwords is probably a lie. The only thing you should take away from a password as being important is the length. Yes, this is the one time where the bigger really is true. So, the longer the password, the better it is. Ultimately, the number of characters that you can add into a password doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. Whether that's 26 or 38 characters that we're using. For a computer, that's not a huge difference in the data set. It's the length that goes up. So, SKCD comes that here, but yeah. It's much better to use correct horse space, which is simple. Seriously, don't use that password. It comes up in databases way too often. People come and watch these talks. But yeah, so the longer the better. Using a passphrase is ideal. The problem is, most people in this room can at most remember about 4 or 5 passphrases before your brain will go out. So what you'll do is you'll come up with a system. And that system is immediately broken rule number 2, which is those 4 words must be random. Humans, terrible at randomness. Done this in large crowds and gone, put up 4 words. And someone said wheel. Someone said blue. Someone said something else, and the third person said car. Out of the 4 words, we described a car in the street outside. Genuinely, when we walked outside, Darren Brown style thing, there was a blue car outside. People had managed, because it was in their head, and instead when someone said blue, everybody else jumped to the same thing. We are terrible at random. So we get computers to do it. Obviously, if you're picking 4, getting some software service to pick you 4 random words, make sure that it's not somebody being evil. XKCD's got, if you look up XKCD password generators on Google, there's a bunch of them. And some evil sod created one that gave the same password out each time. No one noticed for ages, and it ranked really well in Google. So make sure that it is actually totally random. For the rest of us, we're probably going to use Password Manager.
Sorry, where did that slide look like that? Is it a good thing to replace?
I mean, you can. If you can manage to come up with 4 random words, common words, and put some extra bits in, it won't do any harm. But realistically, it's much better for you to be able to remember these things and to remember them and just make it and remember as long a thing as you can. So length is way more important than worrying about these special characters. For the rest of us, we're going to use Password Manager at some point. Now, if you're like me, you're probably using a combination. So for critical things, like my email, I use a passphrase. For my Password Manager, I use a passphrase. But for stuff like logging into my average website, I use a passphrase. Now, password managers in the InfoSec community are becoming more, yes, this is something we should do. But they break one of the really complicated things. See, a password is something that you know. Only you know your password. A password manager is something you own. So it effectively is a piece of software on my computer. But we live in a modern world. You don't have, how many people here use a password manager? Most people. Excellent. Good. I'm speaking to the group, preaching to the choir. How many of you have it on your main computer at work? How many have it on your computer at home? How many of you have it on your phone? This this attack surface is getting really big. How many of these do you share with your wife and other partners? Oh, I've had people go yes to this one too. Yes, yeah. This attack surface is now growing massively. And it's no longer something that you know. It's now something that a community knows.
So attack service, that phrase,
Attack surface just means more opportunities to do something. Getting a wider, a larger attack surface just means more opportunities and lower attack.
like lose your phone, lose your laptop.
Yeah, I can hack this, I can hack that, I can go through range of it. That said, a password manager is going to be able to create you much longer strings of passwords that individually on individual sites is fine. Your target is also shifted. It's no longer talking about necessarily hacking your site, we're now aiming at hacking your password manager. It also means password managers have just become awesome targets. So there are different types. Most people will be using a service, something like LastPass, OnePass, Dashlane, something like that. These are all good services to use. It's worth emphasizing that pretty much every major password management service has been hacked. And if you think about it, that's not surprising, because they are massive targets. Then there are open source password management systems like KeePass and Bitwarden, and they've changed the emphasis. So normally you manage those systems yourself. They come with a much higher level of technical requirements, because often you have to manage where the database is stored, how you deliver between devices, and you end up being the person in charge of security. So which route you want to go down is entirely to you. Personally, if you don't fancy managing your own infrastructure, and I do not blame you one iota, go with a managed service. If you do want to have a go, the two big open source ones, as I say, are KeePass and Bitwarden. If you've never played with either of them, play with Bitwarden first. Way more user-friendly. But KeePass is the older one by far and has more clients. So we've got our password manager. We've stored our password. All good. Next thing we do is enable two-factor authentication. Finally, we're talking about WordPress again. Everybody loves two-factor authentication because it is really worthwhile doing. Every single one of your accounts that is important to have two-factor authentication. Just should. It's just simple. I know it's complicated, makes your life harder, but if it's making your life harder, just think how hard it is making the bad actors' lives. Now, historically, I used to recommend two different plugins as options for this. One was Google Authenticator by Henrik Struck. The other one was 2-factor. Since this talk was originally done, we've now switched over and said everybody should use 2-factor. If you go Google it on WordPress.org, you will find it's 2-factor. There are two primary reasons we recommend this one over anything else. One, it's a feature plugin. It will come into WordPress.org's core system. So it will merge into WordPress core at some point. It is developed by the security team. So this is a good solid base. It also has a more wider range of password options. It supports both Google Authenticator on your phone, but it also supports FIDO and UTF keys like this. So it's got a much wider range. Also, it has a much better UX flow because you will get your standard WordPress login, username and password. It will only ask for two-factor authentication after successful login on the next screen. This means bad actors don't know it's coming. Step one. So they've somehow managed to get your email, username, and password, they phish you or whatever. Then they get slammed with the code. That's one reason why it's useful. The second one is it means that you can be using things like single sign-on systems, social login, all of those sort of plugin type things, and they can be used alongside this. As an aside, this is a Fetian NFC key, which means that obviously most people who have phones, the problem with things like these keys normally is that they're USB. So the idea is it plugs into your computer, this flashes whenever it wants to put code in, you tap that and the code appears on the screen. On your phone, that's much harder, so this uses NFC. So you just tap it on there, and it does the same thing. For anybody who's got a OnePlus phone, even though the documentation clearly shows you that, and all the pictures showing you on a OnePlus 5 and a 6 shows you to do this and put it in the center, the NFC is up here. You will look like an idiot for hours doing this. And I ended up downloading an RFID reader and just sort of ramming around until it made some sort of contact. So just what it's like. So yeah, 2-factor enabler. With a good password manager and a 2-factor authentication, you will eliminate brute force logins. I can't say 100% because there are ways to do it, but you will more or less entirely eliminate brute force. Which means we have just massively reduced down our attack vector because people can't just log in. Yeah, now they have to work for it. So this would be historically where I'd say do something like limit your logins. How many people here use some sort of security software that tells them every time somebody has failed to log in? And it says things like, I banned 50 IP addresses today. I banned 1 million IP addresses today. You've probably all, yeah? Certainly WordFence and a couple of the other ones do this. Right. This is a pointless exercise and totally stupid. Don't let it do it and turn it off. If we have put in good safeguards, the only reason we will ever want to limit logins is if it's causing us resource issues. Otherwise, limiting the logins is more likely to cause us resource issues. You see, have you ever noticed when you have those sort of things like WordPress on, that it gets spikes in login? What actually happens is that, when it says, we stopped 60,000 bad actors. No, you stopped 60,000 times. And you didn't do a very good job of it because you did it another 60,000 times. The problem with the world at the moment is that, lots of sites and things are hacked. Whole waves of microwaves, at least probably one device in this building is hacked. There's no doubt trying to attack somebody and logging into their site over and over again. So when your software just blocks the IP, all the bad actor does switches to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, in their tens of thousands of IP networks that they have at their disposal. IPs are insanely cheap. So, okay, you're never going to win. Blocking them itself isn't going to do any harm, though, and at least it's making them burn through their IPs. Except for two things. One, we now can't see what they're up to. Because had we let them just keep doing this and just dropped the request and said, hey, no, you can just carry on to your heart's content, A, they might have just continued carrying on and wouldn't have given that. But B, if they did anything else, we'd be able to see and monitor and we can pay attention to it. But two, if we're storing all these IPs, it's fine when we're storing 10, 20, 30, 50,000. When we're getting to 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 IPs in our database, that data, and that's being loaded on every single page load, we go and get that list of IPs, run through it and check to see if that IP is the one that is currently making requests. Our site gets slower and slower. And this isn't the number one reason why most people say, my site gets slow when I have a security plugin installed. Like, to compound this, most web hosts have some sort of limit login protection system in place. They're checking for this. This is like rule number one in most WAFs. Even the cheapest of hosting will be probably using fail to ban and be picking up on 403s and 401 requests and blocking when they fail to. So you're not only stopping them to do their job because you're blocking it too early because they may allow 10, 15 minutes. Fail blocking. So you're meaning your host isn't able to do the job you're paying them to do, but you're slowing yourself down. So check with your host if they're running fail to ban. Afterwards, turn off any of that limiting login stuff. Cool. More WordPress stuff. This should be fairly simple. If you don't want something to attack your WordPress, keep it up to date. First and foremost, if there is a vulnerability discovered in WordPress core, it gets exploited insanely quick. If WordPress does an update, you don't have the luxury of going, oh, I don't necessarily need to upgrade. There are two levels, and I know I said that this wasn't going to be a compliance talk. If you do any sort of PCI compliance, because there is no version of LTS releasing for WordPress, the second there is an update, you are no longer compliant, as your version can be deemed out of to be too old. So that's one side of it. But more importantly, if there was an exploit and it was put into the update, hey, we've just, I don't know, we found a cross-site scripting unit in comments. Happened many years ago. Within seconds of that being found, talked about, it will be starting to be exploited, if not already before. Patching WordPress core is vital, to the point that you should automate it. Now, for some people in the room, that doesn't sound scary at all. We already do automatic updates for minors. For some people in the room, they'll go, I do not update. I do it because I test. They wait for as long as possible until someone nags them, and then they go, okay, I'll just do it. People who say that they do testing very rarely actually do testing. So the next argument is, when I update WordPress core, things break. And the answer is yes, because you don't keep things up to date. So that when you update one thing, and all the other things that aren't up to date all have to be updated at the same time, it is massively increasing the likelihood of things breaking. If you just kept everything up to date, then and did small little incremental updates, you'll find that things don't break half as much. Cool. Have you only been so far as to automatically update major releases of WordPress? Automatic updates are your friend. So we'll come with no short. The next one is update plugins. Keeping your plugins up to date, just like keeping WordPress core up to date. Plugins get exploited just as quickly. Seen with things like RevSlider, you need to keep these things up to date. Updating your plugins is vital. Again, I really do recommend automatic updates. Now, each time I say automatic updates, more things have potentials for breaking. But that's okay, because as long as we're making sure everything is updating at the same time, it should be fairly safe. So then we'll update themes. That one's probably wishing ourselves into a world of happiness. I can see some, but we were all there on the bandwagon when we were updating. So, how do we do this? Child themes. So, if you use a child theme, at least then you can update your parent theme behind the scenes. The problem with that is that you will end up in scenarios where these will start to drift away from each other. And this may be where causing them. The good news is themes very rarely update. They are quite, and for non-premium themes, people who've got custom themes, that's not a problem at all. People with premium themes, then definitely child theme. Keep things up to date. Updating everything automatically will save your bacon. Because if you claim that you will do the updates, just think about this. What you are basically saying is you have no life. You cannot go on holiday. You cannot live further away than the ability to press a button at some point. You cannot be knocked down by a bus. This is suddenly having benefits. You cannot be in hospital. You cannot go to funerals. You cannot do anything because you will have to be at your computer 24/7 to press that button. At which point, you need to rethink your priorities and just have automatic updates. We also need to buy from reputable sources. If you are buying a premium plugin, or a premium theme, you are buying it for life. For the life of that plugin that you use on the site. If you decide, I will not pay for updates, do you know what? Those kind developers they won't give you the updates, including the security ones. Aren't they mean and nasty wanting you to pay for their libraries? But if you've found a brilliant website that offers you the themes that you've seen cost 10 times that somewhere else, think carefully before buying from said website. How do they do this? Why are they doing this? There will be somebody somewhere who really does run a GPL website who's doing it because they believe in licensing. Most of these sites are scams or, at worst, inserting malware. So, we've ascertained that we want to keep things up to date. We're going to automatically update. We probably, however, are now in a new state of fear that we're waking up every morning and checking our website. How many of you do that anyway? How many people go onto their website in the morning just to see if it's alive? Yeah, a few people. Yeah. Okay. So wouldn't it be better if we just assumed it was and had technology tell us if it wasn't? That's where monitoring comes in. Two really useful types of monitoring that you can find is HTTP monitoring is the most basic sort. So this is uptime monitoring. You've got things like updown.io, Uptime Robot, Status Cake. There are plenty of these services out there. And it will tell you things like, basically it sends a request every few minutes going, hello, is your website alive? And the website goes, yes, yes. And if there was a fatal error, something that caused a 500-page error, it would go, no. And the status thing would go, no. So if we were to update our site and it came back going, no, we get a nice email in the morning saying the automatic update failed with the status, no, on it. Useful. But not ideal because that only tells us if things have completely gone and gone. What we want is something that tells us if things don't look right. For this, we use a really fancy term. It's called visual regression testing. Now, tomorrow, when you go and talk to your bosses and say, we're going to implement visual regression testing, they are going to swoon and go, ooh. And hopefully, they're not going to ask you what it is, because they'll be less impressed when you tell them the answer. Visual regression testing is, we take a picture of our site, and then every day we take a new picture of our site and overlay it. If it's different, then it's a problem. Visual Ping is a really good solution for this, and it literally does that. You put in your website, you drag and drop over areas of your site that you want to test, and then every day it takes a screenshot of your site and compares it with the screenshot it has on file. If there's a certain amount of difference, it sends you a message saying, oh, this looks different. How would you use this? Your header and your footer of a page. 2 tests, that would tell you that the whole page has loaded. What you don't want to do if you're running, say, a blog or something busy with a big front page that has lots of stuff changing is to do the whole page. Because otherwise, you've either not published any content, bad you, or you're going to get messages that it's not going to use them. Pages that are worth testing, though. Full page on your login screen, really handy. Header and your footer on your home page, that gives you an indication that at least the site's loaded up. And if you have anything like a checkout line, your first page on your checkout. Now, Visual Ping is one tool. You can do all sorts of stuff. Anybody who's a designer and developer who's doing any sort of testing with things like acceptance tests and integration tests and using things like Selenium, yeah. You know those acceptance tests you wrote in development? You can run them on production every day. Now you've got a set test suite that you know is the de facto test suite. So yeah, once we have our monitoring in place and we're automatically updating, we can go on holiday. We can do all those things we've wanted to do all our lives because we know that it's all going to be up fine, and if it's not, we're going to be told about it, and then we'll go fix it. Now, on our managed WordPress hosting, we automatically update WordPress core for everybody. We automatically update any plugin we can from that has some sort of update mechanism that we can get. Would anybody like to guess the failure rate? And by failure, we deem that to be a fatal error or a white screen on the home page or one or page that the customer is. Bearing in mind that these updates happen every single day and night, and they just happen. Would anybody like to think, is it 5%? Cool. I love your confidence. I like it. 3%? No, 3%. 2%? That's 1%? 0.5%? 0.3%? 0.2%? I love your confidence now. 0.1%?
Yeah.
0.1%? You're closest. It's about 0.15% of failures. To put this another way, the average user will get a failure roughly every 7 years. It's weird because that's the average user. But yet, some of our customers get failures nearly every day. Would anybody like to hazard a guess as to what type of customer that might be? It's not your average customer, it's the developer who's tinkering constantly in the background, who's insisting that they will test fit, and so have deactivated automatic updates on individual plugins. Seriously, when we see a failure rate that's higher than sort of 1 to 2%, i.e. that this is happening more frequently than a couple of times a year, inevitably when we go and look at their plugin list, they've set at least one plugin to do not update. There are times where this all goes spectacularly wrong. Yeah, it's just publishing out there on a weekly basis with bad ones. So yeah, there are plugins that will just push out an update and it will break things because the code was bad when they pushed it. Thankfully, there's enough testing in place that this doesn't normally affect it. So it's not a roses, but it's certainly better than the opposite. It's much easier just to get things automatically. We can also look at things like integrity checking. So integrity checking is where this is less about prevention, this is more about detection. So this is where something like WordPress comes in, or Fingerprint. These basically go and look at checksums of all of your plugins. So they go, look through your plugin themes and go, okay, this file has changed from the version that's on WordPress.org. The difference between them is that Fingerprint can do some commercial plugins because it crowdsources those checksums. So it knows that, hey, I've seen gravity forms on on 10,000 sites, and 99.999 of them have this checksum, but you, special person, don't. You have this one. So I think yours is the one that's the dodgy one. This falls down. When we were testing that, on our hosting, we found we had a really weird thing where we had a very small plugin that didn't have a very large user base. And we basically flagged one site and said, look, your site's been hacked. We went and looked at the files, and we couldn't find anything wrong with it. But it was a premium plugin, so we didn't have the original source to look at. So we went and looked at the versions that we saw on the other sites, which we had flagged as being the right, truthful one. And we found that there were hacked files in there. How did this happen? Turns out that particular plugin, the Where's site was higher up in the Google search than the actual author's site. And so the vast majority of people had downloaded from the Where's site, not the original author's site. So there are sometimes, integrity checking is really useful, but it is only useful as a post thing. Likewise, logging and auditing. Have some sort of user record. There are plenty of WordPress plugins that will allow you to audit at user level. The one I recommend is Stream, though there is plenty of others. The reason I recommend Stream is Stream has this really nice feature where it has connectors, so you can go and put the data somewhere else. Because if you store your user logs in the database that's just been compromised, the bad actor will just delete the user logs, or worse still, change the user logs and send you on a merry little dance. So with Stream, you can say, push it out to a file, which I can then pass somewhere else. Likewise, ask your hosting company what they do with your access and error logs. Make sure you have access to them, but make sure that they have some sort of mechanism where those access and error logs go somewhere else as well. So that there's a sort of calibration. At very least, make sure you're running some sort of user records. It's really useful for things like GDPR as well. Share everything over SSL. I don't really, it's 2019. If you're not running your sites over SSL, you're mad. It's quicker. Historically, we used to say that don't use it, the SSL was slower. HTTP2 changed that completely. It's now quicker to run websites over HTTPS. Double check that your host has got HTTP2 enabled. Once that's in place, everything should be there over HTTPS. Just do it. Quick test. Anybody here know the difference between a domain validated and enhanced validated certificate?
Yeah.
Okay. Enhanced validated certificate is.
No, pointless.
That was the punchline. That was the punchline. Enhanced validation basically is where you get that full name in the bar. So it would say Amazon PLC blah 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 in the top. And how that's done is that basically when you sign up, you spend a lot of money. And not only do they check that you own the domain, but they check that your organization exists and that you're a real company and you send them all bunch of data. As you said, completely pointless. But little quiz, because people do like to have fun. Amazon.co.uk, do you think it's got a domain valid, no chatting on your phone? Do you think it's got a domain validation certificate or enhanced validation? Domain, well done. Amazon.com, enhanced or domain? No, enhanced. BBC.co.uk. Yes, BBC.com. Enhanced. Want to carry on with that list? No. NatWest Bank. Good news. On their main site, enhanced on the accounts page, domain. WordPress.com has a really good example where there's obviously the WordPress.com is actually owned by a company called Automatic. So you end up, if you go onto jetpack.com, it actually has Automatic at the top, then mentions WordPress.com in the URL, and then has a jetpack logo. For true and utter confusion in terms of running. If you are paying for an enhanced validated certificate, stop paying for it. Get the main value. Cool. Get good hosting. That was clearly obvious. It's been we've been leading up to this moment, but seriously. There is a massive difference between £2 hosting and £5 hosting. There's a huge difference between £5 and £10 hosting. Beyond £10 hosting, there shouldn't actually be a massive difference when it comes to security. That you should be paying for other stuff for that. Base level, if you're paying £2 a year, if you're getting it for free, if you're paying for it, you should be getting it. Have a disaster recovery plan. Now, your disaster recovery plan should not just be phone your host. Seriously, it has been. And we're quite good at doing some recoveries, but if you have a disaster recovery plan, you will never have to use it. To prove this, I used to run a development agency and we had a zombie invasion plan. And I would point out there has been no zombie invasions since we put that plan into full effect. We also had a flood plan and several others, and none of them, we're not flooded, nothing bad. Have a disaster recovery plan. At very minimum. That's the minimum. How many of you take, everybody takes backups? I'm not going to ask you for your hand up because you'd be embarrassed. But how many of the people in the room have actually looked at their backups in the last week? Is that because you have to restore for something? Yeah. If you don't test your backups, you don't actually have backups. You have prayers. Just because a file is there does not necessarily mean the file contains the thing that you need. All you've got so far is a file that allegedly says. So if you've never restored a backup, go and at the very least open that zip file and check it's got data. So, pretty much summarising through what I actually use personally is two-factor plugin, KeyPass, passphrases, blah blah hosting, visual ping, and I use CodeCeption for all our integration tests. Updown.io, Let's Encrypt. I use CodeGuard for doing some backups and have an extra stuff for other things and doing things. Cool. There's some photo credits. I particularly like the fact that Siobhan's on there because she took a picture of Daniel, and then Daniel's on there because he took a picture of Siobhan. And that's me. And there's some 3 months free hosting if you want. Skipping onwards. Any questions do come up.
If you want to do
Yeah, break.
Just give me 2 seconds. Oh, yeah, crash that.
Did you get? Right. Did you record Tim going to the? Got it. It's on Facebook already. Yes.
Hi, everybody, look, it's my finger again. Wow, this is seemingly oddly familiar and formal ended our Zoom for a few minutes ago. But hi, my name's Tim and I'm a former pen tester. Carry around WordPress, rather small there, and speaks around about security around them. For those on the live stream, you completely missed the thing about British Overwatch, can't we?
What's a pen test?
Please introduce my stooge. So, where do I buy my phone? What is a pen tester anyway? So, a pen tester or penetration. They are normally a fashion. And the rest of the security of the actual work. So, testing. But yeah, like that can be whole straight. Sometimes you might think before you're doing testing your website. People will understand yeah. Seeing this and going, what are we doing? So there was also legal departments have I think you have to look at going through. When these folks have security but a lot of the tooling is more complex. It's two counts. Should become but why is this essentially often they are open public standard. It also means they have common framework of terminology. Paperwork goes ooh, like that, and then you get somebody going, your scan didn't pass. Like, please put mitigation in. No, it passed. Stop it, etc. But that's because everybody's relying on automated testing. In bigger organizations, you shouldn't get that. And I'll show you a way of avoiding having to deal with someone telling you about automated scanning by letting you run it yourself first. You can fix all the issues before your assessor comes in. So, I go around the country, and quite often I give a talk about threat modeling. But I give a whole talk on threat modeling, which is probably the dullest subject you can think about. And risk. And everything to do with IT is about risk. Not just security, everything we do is ultimately a risk assessment and a cost benefit stuff. And that's not fun, but it's worth talking about anyway. So here's a really simplified threat modeling. Whenever we look at any application, whatever it is, whether it's a building, whether it's a piece of software, whether it's a website, we start by defining what we're going to build. What are we building? And we look at what can go wrong. Then we look at what are we going to do about this. And then at the end, we do a retrospective. Did we do a good enough job? Whenever you look at any threat modeling system, that's basically the core of what goes on. There is a hell of a lot more jargon put in there. And each one of those steps expands like 20 paces. Beautifully simplified. But that is roughly our core steps. So when we map threat modeling to pen testing, we're looking at scope and boundaries, what our pen test is going to be doing. We look at the test itself, and we look at how we present that data and information and how we fix it. And I assure you, whatever you're thinking about, there will be something in the peripherals that you could do. That's finished. Oh, you've just caught up.
No.
So, I'm going to show you a bunch of tools in a second. You have two choices when it comes to these toolings. You can either install the tools on your local machine, or you can shove them on a VM and use a VM from something like Kali Linux is a really good example of a good VM to use. Installing on your local machine has the benefits of it tends to be faster, you're not going to a VM. There are a few drawbacks. One, they're taking up lots of space. Two, most of these tools have files in them that will be flagged immediately on antivirus scanners. And on corporate desktops, probably can't get installed sensibly. And three, if it's on a laptop and you take that laptop outside of the UK and try to enter another country, you are technically bringing in hacking tools across state boundaries. Fine in some countries, not so much in others. Think carefully when traveling. It might be just easier to delete the VM and reinstall it in the new country. So, and within the tools, we're going to be looking at three specific things. We're going to be looking at vulnerability scanners, application scanners, and funds. I'll explain what each one of those is. So, probably the best way to get started, if you're just playing around, Kali.org, get the VM. Now, Kali.org has a lot of terminology and has a lot of bits and pieces that may sound a little scary, but they're really not. Nothing with security is particularly scary, and it's broken down pretty easily. Also, the links on Kali.org are not going to take you anywhere particularly nefarious. Obviously, when you think about it, if you're going to start talking about information security, you start Googling the subject, you can very quickly wander down some rabbit holes and think, oh shit, I shouldn't be here, and backing yourself out quickly. This is a nice, safe-ish place to be going, and it won't too much back. Traditionally, if someone starts with a statement, install Tor to visit this website. Just. So, how would we go about doing a penetration test? First of all, we need to define scope. What are we actually testing? Sounds simple. My WordPress website. Now, does that mean? Just the website itself? Does it include the server? Is it just WordPress software with plugin and theme? Or it's anything that's sitting on that server? Is the targeting usernames and passwords reasonable? If you just said, of course it is, you should be allowed to get username and passwords. If you get a username and password in the login, that's clearly an issue. Okay, does that mean I can then target people's email address and start doing phishing? Not so convinced there. We should be allowing this. Can I start targeting them via LinkedIn? This is sounding scary. Can we just start knocking on people's doors? Can I come into the office? Can I go into somebody's house? This is all scope. And in theory, that scope can be as wide or as narrow as you want. Hey, here's a tip, make it narrow to start. Especially if you do, make it very narrow. Because even if the company gives consent to do, hey, we just want you to test everything, including our staff. We want you to go after phishing attacks, we want you to social engineer them, we want you to do a whole heap of stuff. If you were to accidentally find some personal information and inadvertently use it in the wrong way at the wrong time, you can get yourself into all sorts of problems that you just don't want. So make sure that scope is really narrow. And for the vast majority of people in here, I wouldn't recommend starting phishing campaigns with your clients. Let's leave that for a while. We'll just play with web applications. So, what are we targeting? Do we have access to the code base? So if we don't, and it's a closed box, so it's often worth us playing around with an open box and a closed box. Open box is obviously we have access to the code base, we can look through the code base, we can install things on the server to give us more information. That's great. That provides us with ultimately the most usefulness in that we can see everything. However, it's also not very realistic. Oh look, I have access to the server. I formed the server. I'm saying clever. I managed to upload that file through the credentials you gave me. Whereas a closed box, we mean we'll be more realistic and we'll be looking at that. Is the networking scope? If I can get something on the network and start listening, should that allow our employees? Those two should be no at least an issue. When you're hiring in a company, they should be asking these questions. If you're having any sort of pen testing engagement with the company, and for many of you, that might be the way that you'll do any of this stuff. Scope should be the first question. Because if they're not asking about scope, then they haven't understood what they're doing. It's a bit like you going and somebody saying, design me a website, and not telling you even anything, not even the business. It's that sort of weirdness. They come in and say, give me a website, and then walk out. Come do a pen test and walk. Okay? We'll give you deliverables, you're not going to like it. So the next step is reconnaissance. Now, reconnaissance is us basically finding stuff out about the site, about people, about things that happen. At the very least, you go and visit the homepage. Oh, look, it's the website. Good, tick. We know the site. We can also start doing things like digging the records. So in this case, we're just going, okay, example.com, I want to know what IP you're on. So I go dig, Cool, I now know what you're on. Now I can go and I can also go and check for, hey, if I'm going to have multiple IPs and it's got doing load balancing, what's behind the load balancer and stuff in there as well. I can also then, who is those IP addresses? Now, whois used to be an amazing tool. You used to be able to go, whois, and give a domain name, and it will go, here is a bunch of information about the person who registered that domain. That GDPR has made that disappear. However, whois is still really useful for IPs, because IP addresses are not considered in any way personal information. So IPs still return you back what hosting providers are. Why do we want to do this? Well, because some hosting providers have specific exploits. But more importantly, we primarily want to make sure that we're actually hitting the hosting provider and not some sort of proxy like Cloudflare. If we do hit Cloudflare, we can still work out the host behind it. It just takes longer. We could use a tool like Cloudfail, which is a Python tool. But to be honest, all that really does is it looks at historical data to see if the DNS has existed before. If you type in historical DNS data into Google, security trails, There's a few of them that do this already. And you can basically go through, and you're looking for the IP before Cloudflare. Because if you think about it, when you set a website up, and then you put it behind Cloudflare's proxy, well, the chances are that their website hasn't moved, so that IP that we just saw just before Cloudflare's is the one that's really there. And then we can just simply do a curl request and say, curl, website name, let's specify use that IP. If I get the same site back, I know I've definitely got the target. Why would we do this? Well, most of our tools are not going to work against Cloudflare's. We're a proxy in front. We're not hitting that box. We're not seeing it. We'll tell you about that. All right. So once we've got that, we can do something very simple. We can just do Nmap. Now, Nmap is a really nice little tool, and all it does is it goes port number. It goes, hello, and it starts on port 1. And there are lots and lots of TCP ports on a box. In fact, in theory, an infinite number, like 60, 70,000 plus. Yes. Yeah, half of that. Really. Anyway, there are lots of ports on a box, and it basically goes through each one and goes, is there something there? Is there something there? Is there something there? And it just requests something back to get hello. And if it comes back with things that are open, it will then show it. Normally, when you do this, in a sensible world, we should be getting HTTP, HTTPS back. Maybe SSH, we're lucky. If we start seeing bunches of other things open, that means that there are other services exposed. And we can start. But we'll assume that we're just targeting the web application. So up until now, we have done nothing that are... Nmapping is the closest we've come to doing anything harmful. Until this point, we have done nothing that has even touched the box. We've only been speaking to remote DNS requests. Nmap is the thing that's maybe we've started talking to it, but we've been very gently talking to it. If someone blocks us because we've done an Nmap port scan, that's being a bit hard. That said, we do. If you do it, or what we do is if you start port scanning us, we just return you back just I know we put PCI compliant because nearly always they then start trying to look for SSH, and so we just go, so we just then close up the other ports. But they know there's a website on there, so there's no point hiding those. So now we're going to start making noise. And we can start using vulnerability scanners. Now, vulnerability scanners literally just look for known issues. They are not reinventing the wheel. They're not hunting down and doing anything magical. They are just looking for known issues. And the tool that you're all going to be most interested in using is WP scan. WP scan is quite good. It's written in Ruby, and all you do is you give it a URL and say, go off and scan this site. And if you minus VP, it will bring back any known vulnerable plugins. So it goes through and it looks at the top 10,000 plugins in the WordPress Meetup. Now, I'd love to tell you it uses some very cunning techniques for doing this. What it actually does is works out where your WP content folder is, then works out the slug plugins, and then goes for each one of the top 10,000 plugins, goes finds the slug, goes blah 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 plugin / the name of the plugin / vb.text, and then pulls the version out. And that's how it knows it's there and it's working. Obviously, it won't find most of the 10,000, but it will find one or two. And it will present it. It will then look it up against CD databases, looking for that particular plugin, known exploits, compares the version string, returns. So there's a really simple solution. You can just delete all your Ruby files. Don't do that. That's point effective. But you could, if you wanted to, just make everybody's life a little bit harder. You could set up a htaccess rule that denies access to Ruby files, which prevents these scans working. It's not made you any safer. The vulnerability hasn't vanished because you can't find just make your life. WP Scan also has the ability to do brute force logging. So you can basically give it a password dictionary and give pointers to the user and it will start processing through. You can set it up to work through proxies. You can do all sorts of it. It will do plugging the theme vulnerabilities along there along with WordPress core updates. Throwing this at your website will take minutes and will reveal all sorts of that. Hopefully it will all come back green. Most sites come back green with a little yellow. Yellow is not bad. If your site comes back with red, it's amazing your site's still up, to be honest. And that's the downside to using vulnerability scanning like this in this web method, is that we are, as I said, finding things that already everybody else knows about. Now, what this looks like in practice in your access logs is you see a massive splurge of things. Very good. So anybody who's looking in their access logs or has any systems that are looking in their access logs, probably at this stage fully aware that someone is coming to play. And almost certainly either watching your IP, have blocked your IP, or doing fun things with your IP. Good systems will probably have started tar pitting you about halfway through. So tar pitting is where you make the packet requests coming back larger and larger and taking longer and longer to respond. So it's not actually tying up any resources on the server, but you're tying up the resources on the client. This is a much better solution than purely blocking them. So if you're the system administrator, I'm going to for this talk switch between red and blue team. I obviously work on the blue side. So yeah, if you were to tar pit rather than block, you're going to make people's life much more frustrating. And you can tar pit really early in WP scanning. The next option, once you've done WP scan, as I said, if you do nothing else tonight, run WP scan against your site. I'll talk about when to run them, whether to run them in dev or production. WP scan is a fun one to run in production. You might want to do it on a proxy IP, but it's worth you seeing how your hosting reacts to it. And I would argue, and if you want the kind of rocket speed to hosting environment, you're about to do this. But I'd argue that this is still passive. You're not doing technically too aggressive, so we might be right. Next up is Nikito, and it's Nikito 3 these days. This is a much more generic web application. This looks at a bunch of different things. Everything from, it looks for specific files that can be arbitrary decode uploading. It has some cross-site scripting injection attacks. It looks for common, again, all of this is being done through common programs. This is the sort of thing that picks up things on the stuff like that, where it's a known library, it's obvious in your life. Nikito is annoyingly written in Perl. You're going to find with information security, we've already tonight had one application in Python, one application in Ruby, and one application in Perl. One day they'll learn proper languages. They're not that day is not today. Nikito is really useful. It's, again, one that you can throw at things, and the worst it should do is be that IP should get blocked. But again, it generates an awful lot. So the next option is fuzzing. Now, fuzzing looks for a specific exploit. Up until now, we've looked at pattern strings that we've known for known things. Now, fuzzing works by us going, okay, we have a thing that does something, so we're just going to throw data at it, malformed and looks odd, until we get something back that looks like a pattern that we recognize back. And the three useful fuzzing tools for this, OWASP sits in the middle because it does both web applications. It's a vulnerability scanner and a fuzzer. And the fuzzing side of it, to be honest, you're better off using a dedicated fuzzer for most of it. But it can be passed fuzzing on to other parts as well. So you can use things like an SQL map actually alongside it. So we'll skip over WhatsApp and just go straight to SQL map. SQL map works really simply. If you have a URL, anytime you have a URL or some sort of input, and it's identifiably input, if you pass it through a path, it will just start throwing data. So let's take a pretty usual example. This is the sort of standard thing you see for an SQL injection. If I was to show you a demo of an SQL injection, this is probably the standard one. There is a query string with u equals 1. Let us assume for some reason, some way, we don't do any sanitation or validation on this. We're just going to allow anything else to be added. Type SQL map will start doing things where it will start dumping in and saying, well, can I put an and, one and, then drop tables. It will just keep pushing through variations. Okay, maybe that didn't work, I'll use ASCII characters. Okay, I'll start putting emojis in there to see if I can get data in a format or what's that? Cross-site XLS strike is very similar, but it uses the cross-site scripting mechanics. Again, it basically looks for any sort of JavaScript on the page, and sees if it can start passing in the extra data, any data on the page can start passing in junk. Can I get some alerts up there? Can I get it? You can use, these slides are up, by the way. You can use these combined with WhatsApp, which is also a vulnerability. It's a proxy, so in theory, in its most simplest form, you can just give it a URL, hit go, and it works much like the concept. So literally you give it a URL, you go, and it will just come back with a bunch of information. Like, hey, there's this vulnerability. Where it becomes much more useful is set up as a proxy. So you can set it up, and you then have it between Chrome or Firefox and the website. So when you make a request on Firefox, it passes through our WhatsApp and allows you to manipulate the data. Now, at that point, you can start wandering around the website, seeing information, and when you see something you think might be interesting, you can just stop it midway through and say, okay, replay that step. Now let's call in these extra tools. The brilliant thing about WhatsApp, devs in the room, is one hit, which means that you can automate all of these tools in your own head. You can start automating your testing, particularly in development. So you can have, if you've got acceptance tests, all of your acceptance tests can be once you go into exploitation, there are two sort of pretty standard and libraries for WordPress exploitation. The ever famous Metasploit, yay, scoop kitties everywhere, rejoice. And the WordPress exploit framework, which is so obviously Metasploit, specifically for WordPress, even using the same language entirely. So Metasploit is an exploitation framework. It is literally a framework that allows, we can use the WordPress one. That allows you to go, I know that this thing is vulnerable to, I don't know, it's running Divi, and I'm pretty sure it's got WebSlider on it. So I will simply search for WebSlider. I will then look down this big long list of things that's here and go, oh, I can see there's one for Divi. I can then go use exploit shell, Divi WebSlider shell upload. And this is all command line, so I can use this. I'll set the website. I'll set the payload to is exec. And all this is and then I'll set the command to cat the config of it. What this is doing is it's uploading a web shell with a single option on it, which is then launching a command, and it's then interpreting a standard Linux command and returning it. If you do this, in this particular case, that would return you the config file. As it happens in the actual case, it really wouldn't. But I think that's a patch. So when you've got the cat command, you have to do that. But Metasploit works exactly the same. It's just its database is 10 times bigger, but the standard and the languaging in there is pretty much the same. And that's it. Scarily, that really is how we would process through a quick running through the tools. We would start off by looking at Mmap. Once we've got Mmap, we'll sit there, we go to WP scan, we process WP scan, we then throw in a keto at it. Cool, that's going well. We then use any points that come out of it that look interesting. We'll then throw either extra drive point through our mapper, slowly building out. If you're, I mentioned earlier that if you're doing PCI compliance, a specific tool, OpenVAS, which is actually Nessus rebadged. This is the tool that all the PCI compliance tools use behind the scenes. You can run OpenVAS ahead of time. This will give you a PCI compliant report. Thereby defeating the need for a PCI. You still have to go to PCI. But you'll at least know ahead of time that and you can get the integration in place.
Well, it depends on what rule set they're running.
In theory, they should be all running the same rule set. That's the whole point of PCI compliance. The reality is there are certain ones that certainly don't. Trustworthy. But yeah, no, the OpenVAS has 3 competing PCI rule sets, standing 3 compliance rule sets to be run against. One allegedly is closest to Trustway, the number is Moda, and while not identical, they remark as in they are, and they very easy to find online. So we've gone for exploitation, we go to report it. So hopefully we shouldn't be coming back with known CVEs. If we fix those, but chances are we're actually going to come back with CVEs which actually have red scores. Now a red score is very simple. Big number scary, small number less scary. And then, and for things that don't have CVEs and red scores, we can come up with our own scoring method. But ultimately, everything about this model is risk versus cost. So we take a look at the bug, we look at how the bug is in place, what can we do to deal with it. We can fix stuff. That is obviously sensible answer, but I'm sure we all would do. But the reality is some of this stuff might not be fixed. Not easily. It might be a code change that we don't have access to. It might be software that we don't control. It might be a combination of things that will just take 6 months to rewrite. So the next thing is, if we can't fix it, can we block it? Can we put, this is the time that web application files. You may remember in the first talk, I didn't even mention that. That's because WAFs are not terribly useful things. They're brilliant at one thing, saving your hours. But if you rely on them to hide bad code, to protect you from stuff, you are just going to end up with somebody going around. But in this particular case, if we know, okay, we cannot fix this, we have to block it. This is where our WAF tools will come. If it is a case that actually we can't fix this, but we can change a process that mitigates this down to nothing. We can change permission roles so that this can't happen except in this very confusing time. Then we can do that. Or we can actually say, you know, we don't need this feature. It's amazing how often critical security issues turn out from the smallest trivial feature. And many sites will quite often just go, do we need social sharing buttons? And ignoring the marketing person, go, yes, where's my... No. There we go, problem solved, we just delete the code. We'll get rid of it. So, all very simple stuff. We run a few tools, all good. This hasn't actually found us very much. Realistically, we are picking out low-hanging fruit. That's all we need to. Right back at the very start of this, I was talking about drive. We are looking for getting through compliance, doing Essentials Plus level access, and stopping bad actors driving by. We can start doing the more complicated stuff later. We've got to get this right. This low-hanging stuff sorted. The best way to get the low-hanging stuff sorted is also, hey, there's a theme. The devs in the room, if you're doing integration tests already, Mitten, BDD security, and Gauntlet are free acceptance testing and tooling systems for security. In the case of BDD security and Gauntlet, they even use Gherkin as their underlying language bits. So you can write human wording tests, and so you can pass them over to actual. But these are dedicated tools developed by the InfoSec community to do this sort of testing because they didn't know. So here's an example of BDD security. This is a really simple test. Anybody who's not seen acceptance testing, and if you ever thought acceptance testing was writing lots of complicated code, there is whole languages in acceptance testing to let humans write code by writing user stories in actual words. So the computer interprets what those lines say and turns it into code. So in this scenario, it's like feature authentication, blah, server scenario, and you just write out what you want it to do, and then it will go off and do this with a single test. Now, security people built all this stuff because they weren't paying attention to devs. If they had paid attention to devs, they're going to realize that we already have those tools. Be it Codeception, be it BHAT, we already have acceptance testing tools. We already have tooling that allows us to extend modules. There are WhatsApp modules for Codeception. Other modules are available. And you can slowly but surely build out your code base. Alongside this, so that's automated testing, but alongside this is this idea of compliance code. Now, you'll see big providers like Chef, who do lots of provisioning of servers and infrastructure, are really heavily into this, but this can be done at every single level. So, if we have a PCI DSS, we have to go through that process. We take every line that's in that document and we go, okay, how can we turn this into code where necessary? If we are required to have the latest version of the latest protocol, how do we test that? Code. We just make sure our code tests match. Whatever a security person says you need to do X, as a dev, you should be thinking, cool. I hope you budgeted for me to test this. And you write the test together. And that is how you play dev. If you're, because otherwise what's going to happen is he's going to come back next month, and next month, and next month. And you can, and when he changes his mind and decides something else, you can go, no, the test passed. Want a new test? We'll write you a new test, but the test passed. And so everybody is on the same page. Here's a really simple example of a really basic conception test, which is literally, hey, I assert that this URL is over HTTPS. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science. We really probably should do some better checking in that, because that really does assert only that. It doesn't assert that it didn't check that they returned back a HTTP status code to go with that.
Didn't check it's the first piece of work.
No, it just asserts that that's in the URL. But it gives you an example of a really basic test. And you can instantly, hopefully, see how you can quickly build out. Can I SSH into this box? Okay. Should I be able to SSH into this box because my code says I should? This is bad, etc. So what can you take away? Stuff you can test locally. Now, this is on a dev stack or a station. This is the stuff that I'd recommend you test over and over and over and over and over and over. All of these should be pretty quick. Running WP scan locally is fine. And by the way, guys behind WP scan have a plugin that you can install that will just tell you about look up your plugins for all your plugins that you've got installed and check the list that's in the database. And there is a WP CLI. But still, I also always use WP scan to external plugins as well. Run WP scan locally against your dev stack. Run out WhatsApp. Just use it, do it in the GUI form. If you're not happy exploring any further than that, run it in the GUI form. Run Nikito, accept the Nikito against your local stack. Whenever you have an endpoint that you are custom building, and you know that it touches the database, I don't care whether you think you've done a good job. I don't care whatever function you think you put in there. just for your own peace of mind, throw SQL map at it and throw exercise. And also, whenever you get back anything that comes back in amber from WP Scan, look in Metasploit or WPX framework, see if there is a proof of concept. Feel free to run it. You can set WPXF into mental mode, which is basically you can just try every single exploit it's got in it. That can be fun. Have a go, see if it works. That takes quite a long time. We have a lot of WordPress. In production, OpenVAS against production sites. The reason to run OpenVAS against production sites is as opposed to running it against your local dev environment. So unless your local dev environment happens to be your same as your production stack in technologies, most of OpenVAS for PCI compliance is looking at the technology stack underneath, not necessarily the application. So consequently, it's a bit pointless to just move a dev site. Probably going to come back saying, what? This isn't even the same operating system. SSH audit, again, it's no point throwing an SSH audit. SSH audit goes through and looks at the protocols and looks for cipher map, what cipher is being used on SSHD. Pointless on a dev site because it's almost certainly not going to be seen in production. An SSL lab scan, which just does a quals SSL lab report. Again, something that can be easily automated into your tests. So that you can, as part of your standard integration tests, every time you push code into production, you can do an SSL lab scan. Check it coming back on protocols. Automation, BDD security gauntlets, code section, BHAP, whatever you're running already. And then OWASP, SQL map, and Exodus strike all run headlessly. Use independently. There we go. Question. Actually, turning that off. Bye bye.